Here we go.
Awesome, Mick. This is such an honor. I'm such a huge fan of your work. And I just
Thank
love
you.
finding out about folks like the beginnings because this isn't a normal career. It's not like,
That's
hey, I
for
want to
sure.
be. It's like I want to be an accountant. You go to school for accounting, you get a job at a firm, and there's so many jobs. But in the film industry, there's not that many jobs. So many people go out for one position. Your beginnings, one thing I usually don't know a lot about folks before they get to that first credit, but just from reading a little bit about you, you were in music. So
Yeah,
you were a lead singer of a band?
I did a lot. I started out writing, doing journalism, music journalism, interviewing people like Janis Joplin and Jimi Hendrix and people like that,
Wow.
and writing reviews for the San Diego Door, which is the same paper that Cameron Crowe wrote for when he was 15 and I was 17 or 18, something like that.
Wow.
Uh,
You guys
and
are there at the same time?
Yeah. And Almost Famous
Oh.
is kind of the first third of that is my life as well. So, yeah. So very similar, but we went into different branches of the film business. Um, but yeah, I was a singer in a band, a prog rock band, all original music. And then I managed to make a move. I started to make a living doing publicity for movies, specializing in genre films. And then all the time I was writing screenplays that nobody bought until a certain fellow named Steven Spielberg bought one after I'd been doing documentaries on the making of Gremlins and the Goonies and Videodrome and The Thing and stuff like that. So yeah,
How did
it's
that all come to be? What was that like early on? Like you were doing the music. Was music your first love, or even as a kid you were into film and
oh,
and
I loved movies,
writing?
movies and television and writing. I started writing stories, and they were scary stories when I was 12 years old. So I
Yeah.
seriously started writing at the age of 12, and then it just kind of morphed into journalism. I had a real passion for music, particularly off the beaten track music. Um, but everybody around my age started with the Beatles. That's where it all started for everyone. But
Yeah.
I had always had this interest in outre film and television, was brought up on Twilight Zone and Outer Limits and Richard Matheson and Ray Bradbury and reading all those things. And so I first started short stories and then started writing screenplays in my 20s and then was doing making of documentaries. And I was shooting the making of the Goonies up in Astoria, Oregon. The first day of shooting,
Nice.
we're setting up the lights to interview Steven Spielberg. And interviewing was something I'd always had a passion for, which I carried through the podcast
Yeah.
until 2 years ago. And so I'm interviewing Steven Spielberg, and he says, "So you must do a lot of these." And I said, "Well, I'm trying not to," and said something you should never say to Steven Spielberg. "I'm trying to make a go of it as a screenwriter." But the timing happened to be such, and that we got along, hit it off well enough, that he said, "Oh, really? We're looking for writers for this new series I'm doing called Amazing Stories." So my people contacted his people. They read one of my spec scripts, and they loved it. And the last line of the coverage was "hire this man." So Stephen hired me, and I went literally from food stamps to moving into my own office at Amblin on the Universal lot.
Oh my gosh. How'd you get
Yeah.
connected doing the behind the scenes stuff? How did you go from the San Diego paper to doing that in LA?
Well, my first job was working on the original Star Wars. I was a receptionist for Star Wars in 1977, 78.
Wow.
And so they had me doing other things like writing press releases and various grunt work and the like. And I operated R2D2 at personal appearances like the Oscars that year, the one and only time I've ever been to the Oscars or ever will.
That's cool.
And so I started to learn about doing publicity. And I knew a lot about the science fiction and horror magazines and the like because I was a genuine fan.
Yeah.
And so I knew more about them than the publicists did. So I was hired to do specialized publicity for the genre films, and I started off at Avco Embassy, and there was The Howling and The Fog and Escape from New York and Videodrome, and well, no, that was Universal. So the head of Avco Embassy was a guy named Bob Ramey, and he moved over to Universal as the head of Universal, and he brought me along because they had The Thing, and they had Videodrome, and they had An American Werewolf in London. They had all these genre films once again. So they thought I could be of value there. And that's where I would hire myself to do the making ofs because I was a lot cheaper. I cost 10% what the real guys cost.
Yeah.
So for $9,000, including all travel and hiring crew and everything, you get me to make a making of documentary rather than $90,000 to pay a real crew to do it. So
Yeah.
I learned how to put stories together by putting pieces of film together doing documentary work. And my work as a writer from the time I was 12 morphed into screenwriting and eventually paid off.
Yeah, and to open your mouth. Like, we're in New Jersey now, but we lived in Oregon for a few years, and we took that trek out. We didn't go to Astoria. We went to Cannon Beach, so it was pretty wild to, first of all, just to see like these giant rock formations in the Pacific
Yeah.
Ocean, but just to stand where that camera was set up when
Yeah.
the pirate ship comes out, it is wild to be there. So that's cool. You're able to be there for those makings of, and you open your mouth, even though you're like, I shouldn't have said that. It worked out.
Yeah.
So you get amazing stories. You have an
Well,
office on
Steven asked
Amblin.
me, so I was able to answer. Yeah.
Yeah, right. He's great. Everybody I've ever talked to that has worked with him, like Peter Jason worked with him on Arachnophobia. He also did like some stuff on Raiders. And he just had he was like a big kid, and maybe
Yeah.
that's
Oh,
why he's so great at what he does, because he sees it through the eyes of a child.
yeah. I mean, I've never had anything but a good experience with Steven. I mean, there were some things that were promised that he wasn't allowed to deliver that I was disappointed by, but those were things that just happened during the course of business as usual.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, he gave me an opportunity that is still continuing to this day. So I got
Yeah.
no complaints, nothing but joy from Steven Spielberg.
Yeah. And it's cool because it's not like you wrote a one episode. You wrote a good handful, and you actually directed one. So what came first, you writing one or the directing
writing
part
came
of it?
first. He asked me to come in and meet with him, and he had 22 story ideas that he had come up with himself. And they ranged from a couple of sentences to a couple of pages each. And he gave me an assignment of the first one to do. I didn't know at the time that I was the first person asked to write one of the scripts. So I took his story. I wrote the script in 3 days. I delivered it. He really liked it. He asked me to do another one. And a day and a half into doing the second one, offered me the story editor job, a full-time job with my office at Amblin on the Universal lot. And so, it's timing, it's being able to deliver what people want, and, talent is third on the list. Timing, giving people what they want, and talent are things that help you cross the line. And if you can keep it up, then it's just like a distance race,
Yeah, yeah. Do you have a specific writing process that you follow? Is it different if it's like you got to get this done in X amount of days, or how do you usually sit down and do it?
I'm a very facile writer. It comes easily to me. I enjoy the process. So basically, I don't need that, let me sit and agonize over it for a week or two. I
Yeah,
sit down, I start on page 1. I rarely have an outline unless it's on assignment. Then you have to deliver steps one at
yeah,
a time. But if I'm writing on spec, I start on page 1 and I finish on page 110 or whatever it is. I don't write out of order. I'll write in the morning. I'll get up, have my breakfast, read the news, come into my office where I am right now, which is next door to my house, and try to go until lunchtime, 6 or 7 pages, another 3 or 4 after. So it's a downhill slide after lunch. And I try and do 10 pages every day. And then, that's in a couple of weeks, I've got a draft. Yeah.
Yeah. Was specs you had a lot of specs that you wrote? Like in the beginning, that was the old way to get people to read your stuff. There's specs and then you're writing your original stuff. Were
I
there any
still
like
do.
sequels? Are you still write specs?
I still write specs more than anything. And
That's
you
awesome.
rarely sell them, but you get better with every script you write, unless you're a hack. But yeah, the sequels were the open door.
Yeah.
There was Fly 2 for me. There was Psycho
Love it.
4. There was Critters 2.
Yep.
So I was big on movies with numbers in the title for a while.
Well, we love sequels, and I've always loved them because I think it's always so fascinating when you think of some of the movies. The second one is close to the first one. Some it's completely different, and just how far they go off the rails. But I know you just mentioned. I know there's other credits. We're not going to talk about all of them, but so Critters 2, the main course. How is that? Is that a spec, or does somebody go to you and say,
No, they
"Hey,
came to me. Yeah.
really?"
Yeah. Well, the first Critters is very Spielbergian. And I think what they wanted was some of that magic to rub off. They figure if we hire somebody who works for Spielberg that Spielberg likes, maybe that can help us. So that was the first time I was offered a greenlit feature as a director, as well as rewriting the script. They told me you can rewrite it however you want. We want you to direct it, in the hopes that some of that Spielberg glitter will rub off. And it might have creatively, but the movie was a total flop until home video. And then it became successful enough to warrant another 3 and 4 to be
Yeah.
made. But I have a very soft spot in my heart for Critters 2. It's a movie that I love a lot. And, it's very weird because a lot of the early stuff that was not successful, like Critters 2, now has this big cult following, more than any of the other Critters movies. And like writing Hocus Pocus, that was not a success when it came out, but now it's the biggest Halloween movie ever,
I
You
know.
can't avoid it, and it's bigger every year. So.
Yeah. Which I definitely have questions about that. So I talked with Leanne Curtis, and she had some amazing things to say about you. Like, loved working
Uh-oh.
with you, and she knows every word to Hungry Heifer. She
Which
was
my
singing
wife
it.
wrote. Yeah.
Really? That's
Yeah.
amazing.
I came up with one line. We won't give, at the Hungry Heifer, we won't give you a bum steer. But the rest of it's my wife.
Yeah. I think that movie has the staying power because it's like this little community you get dropped into. Like you think of like, oh, there's like, you see like, the one cop, then you see the one from the original. And it's like cool because it's like an Easter setting. There's not a lot of Easter horror movies and just the characters
Definitely.
are over the top. And that's what you want in horror. I want to go and I want to like meet a cast of characters, and that's what you get in this movie. The lady running like the daycare who's like drunk.
Nana, yeah.
Yes, there's so many fun characters in that.
Well, there's
Mick,
a sweetness to it and a
Yeah.
character orientation that you rarely get in a horror movie. It's what I like to refer to as Norman Rockwell goes to hell. So,
When you're writing, do you have any personal touches that you put in stuff or
as
little
much as
Easter
I
eggs? Like
can. Yeah.
you do, yeah. Is it like homages to maybe like a hometown or a relative, or what kind of things do you like to like sneak in there?
My grandmother, I called her Nana. So that was the
Ah,
character
that's
for
amazing.
her. And yeah, town settings, family jokes, relationships, names of family members or friends, or you want to make it as personal as you can, because then it becomes a more well-realized story than just something superficial that you make up 100%. The more you
Yeah.
can ground it in an existence that truly
Yeah, and
lived.
you'll connect with it more. You have like a
Yeah,
part of it. Yeah,
yeah.
that's true. How'd you? So your wife is an actress too. When
She
did you
has
guys?
acted. She wasn't a full-time actress, but she didn't do it before we met. But afterwards, it was a great way to be able to work together. Was as she was when we met, she was a singer, a songwriter, bass player in a
Okay.
new wavy band, all original new wavy band, and so. She was always a performer. Before that, she was a ballet dancer, but she'd never done acting until we got together. And then we discovered she was good at it. So
That's awesome. When did you guys meet? Was it through the music scene or through just being in LA, like music, movie wise?
neither. We met outside of a restaurant in Hollywood, and she knew me from the interview show that I did on the Z channel, which was a pay TV channel here in LA. So she recognized me and said, I'm a fan too of the sci-fi and horror movies, and I watch your show all the time. And so I said, well, I'm listed in North Hollywood at the time. And she called me and invited me to come see her band play. And at
Wow,
the
that's
time,
awesome.
she was with a boyfriend who was the lead guitarist in the band. That ended pretty quickly afterwards.
Yeah, right. So one thing I saw on both your IMDb's, you guys are in the Thriller music video.
Yeah, we're both close-up zombies in Thriller.
That's cool. So I interviewed Tim Lawrence, who was
Oh,
in
yeah.
the video,
Yeah.
and yeah, that's awesome. I didn't notice that when I was looking, because
Yeah,
when I talked to him,
he's the tour zombie.
yes,
Yeah.
yes, because he did the makeup test, and they liked it so much, and then he's like on the cover of the video.
Yeah,
The
so is
video,
my
the
wife.
VHS
Yeah.
tape. Really? That's
Yeah.
amazing. That's one of those things that is like, it's got to be the greatest music video of all time. That was like a
Absolutely.
thing when we were kids, and even my neighborhood where I live in Jersey, it's like an old Victorian neighborhood. So they
Nice.
shut down the streets for Halloween, and it's like really cool.
Nice.
But I'll always play like Nightmare Before Christmas, Hocus Pocus, and then in between we'll throw on the Thriller video, and that was like so cool. Like
It's your
really
Mick
even going
Garris
back
night.
yeah, it's the best. So good. That's awesome. I have to look out for you the next time I check it out. But,
I'm the last zombie to come out from under the ground. So
okay.
yeah.
Nice. So Critters 2 happens, it comes out. How does Fly 2? Is that script already something you've written, or are you getting approached again?
Well, I actually was writing Fly 2 when they had a regime change at 20th Century Fox, and Scott Rudin was our executive on the movie when it was being written. And Leonard Goldberg came in to run the studio, and he wanted to turn Fly 2 into a teenage monster movie. And I had come up with something I really liked a lot and was proud of. So they were going through their battles at Fox, and Bob Shea offered me to rewrite and direct Critters 2. So I said, see ya, guys, and was able to have an easy out as far as getting out from in between the warring factions that were going on at 20th Century Fox. And it worked out well, except for the fact that I wrote and directed a bomb as my first movie. But people liked it. They thought it was well done, considering it was a little $4 million movie as opposed to The Fly, which was a lot more expensive.
Yeah.
But, it's a movie that continues to get love that it didn't get in its original inception.
Yeah, it's fun. I like it. I talked to Gary Chalk, who played Scorby, and that was like his first big job in Hollywood. And he still was like so thankful for that. And he actually has he went into like a costume shop one day. I think it was like in the late 90s or 2000s, and somebody had like a cast of his head or something.
Wow.
He was like, "Oh, I know who that is," and it was like a piece
yeah,
of him.
Me.
But
cool.
yeah, that's me. But just such a good, it is still such a good movie. That's a movie
thanks.
that I had a VHS tape, watched it a ton as a kid. Now, when you watch these movies, so are you throughout the process, or you're at Critters 2, or are you coming on set? Are you being consulted, like, while the movie's being filmed at all, or no?
Well, on Critters 2, I was a director as well, so I was
Yeah,
there every
yeah.
minute,
But
yeah. Um,
yeah. But
and
for, like, Fly 2 with, like, Chris Wallace, is he
Fly
reaching
2
out
was
to you?
shot in Toronto. I live in LA. I was not invited to the set. After I did my drafts, Frank Darabont wrote his drafts, then Jim and Ken Wheat wrote theirs. So, in general, screenwriters are not often invited to the set unless they're the only writer on the project. And as
Oh,
the
okay, that makes
first
sense.
of 4 writers, that was never the case. Although Chris Walas is a terrific guy, and we're friends, and there was never any kind of antipathy or anything like that. It was
Yeah,
a good experience. But once I left The Fly, I left The Fly. I was on Critters
yeah.
2 in
Do
L.A. Yeah.
do you watch the movies, especially when there's, like, rewrites? Because I talked to somebody not too long ago. He was somebody that wrote on, I don't even know what superhero movie it was. Maybe it was, like, the Green Lantern. It took, like, all those years to make, but is there something when you watch that movie, you're like, "Oh, that's something that I introduced, like, a character that you put in?" Is it ever
Yeah, I mean, it's great. I've only seen Hocus Pocus 2 once.
Yeah,
I think it was operating in a different level than Hocus Pocus 1 was. And, I feel a connection to Hocus Pocus that I don't feel to Hocus Pocus 2. And there will be a Hocus
yeah.
Pocus 3. So,
I saw
um,
that.
yeah, but something that I was on from the conception, or if there's no sequel, or even if there is a sequel, if there's some distance from it, um, batteries not included, I feel some possessory
I'm
feelings toward
sure.
that. And things I've directed in particular, I feel a great sense of ownership. Although you share that ownership with a strong producer like Steven Spielberg, or a strong executive producer and screenwriter like Stephen King. So,
Yeah. No, Batteries Not Included is one that I watched a ton as a kid. I felt like that was on the local, like, Channel 11 out here,
yeah.
New York. Like, all the time, I felt like that was always on. Such a good movie. Again, it's just something that it, it's so there's so many characters in it, and that's what I love about movies. Like, there's obviously you watch like One Battle After Another, or a movie like that,
Yeah.
and you're like, wow, this is insane. But sometimes you just want to escape, and you just want to watch these over the top characters,
Yeah.
and everybody's just giving it their all, and it's just so much fun. That's why I love horror and sci-fi. I feel like you can nail that so much more in that genre. If people are acting that way in other genres, it just doesn't work.
Yeah, but I also feel that the closer uh, you bring your horror to real life drama, the more effective it is.
Yes,
Over the
yeah,
top
totally.
slasher movies, that's another thing. But uh, I always like to play everything like Shakespeare, you know, to take it all seriously, to have good drama first, and then layered over that, the horror makes it that much
Yeah.
more effective. Yeah.
No, I agree. So Psycho 4, it's pretty cool the movies that you're working on or being involved with. That must have been pretty cool because just obviously what Psycho was, and I think Psycho 2 is one of the best sequels that people don't talk about enough. That second
I agree.
Psycho is unreal, and it's so cool that there was a fourth one. What was that like having the opportunity to work on that?
It was fantastic and terrible at the same time because Tony Perkins wanted to direct Psycho 4, but he directed Psycho 3 and it did no business and got
Yeah,
terrible reviews. So they ended up doing Psycho 4 for Showtime, theatrical overseas in some territories, but not here.
yeah.
But we had the screenwriter of the original Psycho, Joe Stefano. We had Tony Perkins playing Norman Bates, all of that. He was a very challenging actor. He was a guy who would constantly challenge me and say he wanted to know that I was setting up something up not because it was a cool shot, but because it helped tell the story. So he he would challenge me all the way through until after the film was done and we screened it for him at the Hitchcock Theater at Universal. He went on and on about how much he loved it and how he thought it was by far the best sequel, and it made all of the
Uh,
hard work really worthwhile because he's Norman fucking Bates, you know?
I know.
Uh, and it was a great experience, very quick. It was shot in 4 weeks in Orlando, Florida. We opened the theme park with that shoot going on in the background. So it was a great experience. And also, one of the best lines from my worst ever review of anything I've done was, director Garris is to Hitchcock what Peoria is to Paris. So, it's a great insult, but it's pretty clever.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess you got to think with somebody like Anthony, but that's like you said, he's Norman Bates. It's probably such an ownership of
Yeah.
maybe like making sure that it's done well. But no, that's really cool. I love the second movie. It is so
Yeah.
crazy. Like some of these sequels that are way after that I just never watched when I was a kid. Maybe it was just I didn't rent it for the video store. But when we watched Psycho 2 a few years ago for the podcast, I was floored at how good it was. Like,
yeah, that was
it
1982.
Was shock.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was Tom Holland wrote it, and Richard Franklin, who was a Hitchcock scholar, directed it and directed the shit out of it. I mean, they did a great job. I love that movie.
Early Dennis Franz as the sweaty, like creepy guy. Like he does that. He plays that even as a cop. He's always just annoyed with everyone. And
you just want to wipe him off, you know?
Yes, yeah, exactly. Oh man! And then right after that, so you already had some sort of connection with Stephen King at this point, right? Because you worked on I guess a little bit with The Shining, like
The Shining,
right?
No, the Kubrick film was 1980, and our miniseries was not until 97. We shot it.
Okay. I thought you were
96.
No, I know that, but when you were doing the interviews for The Shining, that was 80, right?
Yeah, probably did. I interviewed Scatman Crothers on my Z Channel show.
Oh, that's what it was. Okay.
Yeah, so that was probably 1980, 81. And
okay, so the first time you're connecting with Stephen King is on for Sleepwalkers.
Yeah, that was the first time we worked together, and they originally hired a different director, and that director started to play with Stephen King's script. And if you're Columbia Pictures and you have a movie written by Stephen King, you want to be able to call it Stephen King's Sleepwalkers. If it's rewritten by a director so that it's not Stephen King's Sleepwalkers anymore, it's not a good commercial decision to make. So they ended up kicking that other filmmaker to the side and inviting me back after I'd already interviewed for it. So I came back. I thought I was just meeting for them, and they said, "So here's the key to your office. It's right here. We're going to move you in." And wait, what? So suddenly I was doing it.
Was that the most expensive purchased script at the time? Wasn't there something like that? Like
I think the last Shane Black did an Arnold Schwarzenegger movie, The Last American Hero. No, Last American Hero or something like that. By Shane Black. That was the most expensive script. Okay. The Sleepwalkers script was $1.5 million.
Okay. Yeah, no, I remember it being what seemed like a very large number for a script. So what was that experience like? That was a cool cast that you were able to work with.
It was a great.
Twin Peaks was already on at this point?
Yeah, that's where I discovered Mädchen, where I first saw her work, Mädchen.
The best.
Amazing. And then Alice Krieger I had seen in Ghost Story, and I just was blown away by her in Ghost Story and wanted her to play Mary. And that was a great experience because it was the first time working with King, although we never met until he came to L.A. for 2 hours. He was on the set to do his cameo with Toby Hooper and Clive Barker, and then off on his private jet back home. And it's like, whoa. So that was the first time we met.
I wonder why. Do you think he just was... Did he just not want to be... Did he not ever visit sets?
He didn't visit sets rarely, but I had written in this part for him. And he was excited to do it, especially knowing that Toby was there and Clive was there. And he had never met either of them in person before. And so it was a little 2-hour party, and it worked out great. King is so recognizable. 6'5", first of all, so he stands out in a crowd. He can't just be
Yeah.
somewhere and let people let him alone, because when we were shooting The Stand, he came to visit the set on a day we had 600 extras on the street of downtown Las Vegas. Every one of them came right at him. He turned around, went back to the car, took him to the airport, and flew him home. Yeah,
Yeah, I don't blame him.
yeah, I don't either. Yeah,
That's pretty overwhelming. Have all these people coming after you.
yeah, it can be pretty scary. I mean, it literally like being Night of the Living Dead times 100. Yeah.
Right. And Mark Hamill's in that movie.
He
Did
is.
you know him from 77, like when you were
Yeah.
working at Star Wars at all?
Yeah, that's where we met. And so I knew he was a horror fan. And just recently, there was an article that he'd completely forgotten about being in Sleepwalkers. And so it was funny to see that. But yeah, I had asked him if he would consider doing a cameo. And it was his idea to put on the mustache and to not take credit, to do a cameo, but without acknowledging it. So it was a secret. And people go, wait, is that Mark Hamill? That's Mark Hamill. Yeah. So it was a lot of fun. A lot of cameos in there. John Landis and King and Hooper and Barker and Joe Dante. Yeah.
That's cool. No, I think Mark Hamill. It is such a shame because of how big like Star Wars and being Luke Skywalker. He's like a phenomenal actor, and I don't know if he just wasn't getting opportunities in the like after the Star Wars fame.
I think
But
he
he's
had bad
just
management.
so good.
Yeah, he's really good. I
Yeah.
mean, you've seen The Long Walk, I'm sure. He's fantastic in that. And it's
Yeah.
his return to Stephen King territory. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I just remember seeing him in like a very weird, like adult-ish kind of movie. I remember he used to play on like cable and like
Yeah.
some woman like possessed him.
Oh,
I don't know if she was
yeah,
like
that was
Satan.
Black Magic Woman. Yeah.
Yes, very just a weird movie. You're like, Luke Skywalker, but no, he's amazing. A phenomenal voice actor.
Yeah. Yeah.
Too.
Very famous for
And you
doing
did some
the
voice
Joker.
acting, right?
That's how I got my SAG card, was doing some voices on the Pink Panther cartoon show.
How does that happen? Just you knew
Well,
somebody that worked on it? Or you're like,
yeah.
I can
I had
do
worked
that.
with Matt
Yeah.
Frewer on The Stand, who played Trash Can Man. They hired him as the voice of the Pink Panther, and he knew, because we were on the set, our makeup effects artist, Billy Corso, and Matt and I all do voices. So Matt knew I did voices, and he asked me to come down because he knew I had never seen an animation acting session. And so
Yeah.
he invited me to come in. And afterwards, I didn't know it, but he'd set up a meeting with the producers for me to audition me. And they would throw things at me like, do a Mexican horse, do a dog who can't get out of his doghouse. Yeah. And I would just rattle them off and do things. And they called me the next day and asked me to come in and do some voices. So I did a singing
Wow.
Mexican frog. I did a handful of voices for two episodes of the Pink Panther.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you're able to, that's cool. You go in just to be able to, hey, let me check out how this whole thing works. And then you leave with your SAG card.
With a
pretty
gig.
much.
Yeah,
Yeah, right.
exactly.
So as like being a big horror and sci-fi fan, it must have been cool. Obviously, Steven Spielberg, Steven Spielberg, Stephen King, and then directing an episode of Tales from the Crypt. That was like must see us. Tales from the Crypt was so good.
And mine was a very weird episode because it was comedic. And so I hired two comedians to play the leads, Richard Lewis and Rita Rudner. And I wanted to set it at the Tales from the Crypt offices, so it took place in the 50s, so it was a period movie. It had two comedians playing dramatic parts, and I switched the male and female roles from the script. I turned them upside down, and Richard Lewis played the part that was written for the woman, and Rita Rudner played the part that was written for the man. So it turned out really, really fun. It was a blast. Very
Yeah,
short.
they were fun.
script.
Yeah, those shows were just so good, and they were just the Crypt Keeper and the
Yeah.
intros. Anytime there's like Monster Vision, like with Joe Bob Briggs
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
Rhonda Shear's back now,
Yeah.
it's just amazing. Like curated movies, because you tune in for the Crypt Keeper. Like he was just as entertaining sometimes, and then you get this amazing episode that's done that has either people you already know from TV
Yeah.
and movies,
Yeah.
or people that in a few years later are going to blow up. Like I interviewed William Sadler, and the way he got that gig was wild because they wouldn't even let him audition for the part he ended up getting. He was asking the casting director, and she's like, "No, we're looking for somebody that's more famous because it's the first episode."
Yeah.
And he was like, he asked her one more time before he left, and she was like, "No." And then I guess maybe she had a second feeling. She's like, "You know what? Come put it on tape, Billy." And then put it on tape, and then he ended up getting the role, and then
Yeah. And
kind of like changed everything for him.
those first three were amazing. Dick Donner and Walter Hill and
Yep.
Bob Zemeckis. Each one of them is a masterpiece. And yeah, Bill Sadler had done amazing stories before that.
Oh, he did?
Yeah, yeah. So, but it's also why with Masters of Horror, I chose not to have a host so that everything would be a freestanding movie and you wouldn't have expectations of bad horror puns and all that.
Yeah, 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 yeah. You're right. Oh man. So, do you have any? Because obviously we don't want to talk about every single credit because you have so many. But do you have a personal like favorite that you look back? I know you said Critters 2. That was a big one because that kind of changed the game for you in a way. Do you have any other personal favorites that you directed over the years or something that you've written?
Yeah, I have favorites for different reasons. The Stand was seen by everybody, and it was a huge success, the highest rated miniseries in history. And you never get the chance to reach an audience like that. The
Yeah.
Shining miniseries, I think the filmmaking is even better in that because it's more contained and not all over the map. And then a little movie, another Stephen King adaptation that was just a 30-page short story that I turned into something very personal, and another period movie was Riding the Bullet. So that one's close to my heart because it's dedicated to family members that I lost. So different reasons for loving the different projects. So
Yeah, no, I'm sure.
yeah.
So now the one movie that I've seen just a million times is Hocus Pocus. How does that come to you? Is it just your love of horror and like witches? Like, how does that story come about?
Well, I've always had a passion for those stories, but the producer, David Kirshner, came up with this story to tell his young daughters as a bedtime story at Halloween. Then it got published in the Muppet magazine. And then he had written An American Tail, which was an animated movie for Amblin for Steven Spielberg.
Yeah.
At the time, I was writing for Spielberg for Amazing Stories. So David and I met, realized we had mutual love for the genre, mutual love for our work for Steven Spielberg, and he thought that I would be the right guy to turn it into a screenplay. So that's how that came about. And then, we had a lot of fun creating together, and I would go off and do pages and write Billy Butcherson, create that character, some of the ideas and the like. And then it languished for years. There were 11 other writers on it after I left the project.
Oh my
And
God.
nobody thought it was ever going to go until they attached Bette Midler 8 years later before they got a green light. So I was the
Wait, so
first
this
out of
is
12
so
writers.
this is right at Amazing Stories. So this
Yeah.
is 84, 85 that this first starts?
Yeah, 93 is when the movie was
Wow.
made and came out. But it was 8 years before that I wrote my 2 or 3 drafts.
And do you get a call, or how does that just he reached out to you?
David
Or
reached
somebody
out
reached
to
out
me.
to you?
David
Yeah.
Kirshner did because we were both working at Amblin at the time, and it was an easy meet. And we had this meeting, and it just couldn't have gone better. And David is one of the nicest guys on the planet and a real sweetheart. And we hit it off and became really great friends, which we are to this day.
When did you know that the film, because you said this wasn't like in the movies, it didn't do well?
It
Hocus
did not.
Pocus?
It did not do well. It maybe broke even, if that. Probably not.
Yeah.
And especially knowing the bookkeeping at Disney, I guarantee they don't think it broke even.
Yeah,
But
right.
but it was when it started showing up on ABC afterwards, and then ABC Family, which became Freeform, um,
Yep.
and then every Halloween they would run it on Halloween. Then they'd run it all month long, every day, every day of October they would run, and then on Halloween Day it would run 12 times in that day.
Oh my god.
So it's still getting bigger every year. It's amazing to go out
Yeah.
on the street and see little girls in their Sanderson sister costumes and the like, you know. It's kind of a phenomenal feeling knowing that you've struck a chord around the world with something like that.
Yeah, that's nuts. I remember always having it, maybe because my grandma loved Disney, so she would always buy like the VHS tapes. But I always remember watching it. So I never thought of like the almost like the Christmas Story, how
Yeah,
that got big. It was just like I talked to Scotty Schwartz and he told me that a woman that worked at Turner, like the assistant said, "Oh yeah, my kids love this movie." And then they were like, "Oh, we can get this for cheap."
yeah.
And they were able to play it on Christmas and it like obviously I don't know if the actors saw a lot of it but or how that works sometimes, but that's truly amazing because it is such a good movie and it's
It's
great
a
world
great
building. Like
movie.
we went to Salem for our
Ah,
baby moon before my daughter was born. My wife wanted to go up there, and we went up just before Halloween. And it was just so cool to see some of the places from the movie, and just the whole vibe was captured perfectly of when you're there on foot and when you're watching the film and just the people in it. It's kind of crazy to think that the movie didn't like you said like broke even. The people in the movie are pretty amazing. Like the entire cast, even
yeah.
some of the cameos are just so good.
No, it's they did a great job of it. And, you know, I went to Salem to scout the city before I wrote the script.
Oh
And
wow.
every year for like 6 years in a row, my wife and I went back to Salem to celebrate Halloween there because they have a huge 11-day celebration that climaxes on Halloween night with a candlelight vigil on Gallows Hill with all of the witches of the city. And there are more witches in Salem than anywhere else on the planet. So they all had their candles walking up to the Gallows Hill where all the witches were killed. So
So good. And then one of the guys, the guy who plays Ice, just got married there,
yeah, that makes
which
sense.
is awesome. That's so cool.
Yeah, ice is not such a popular word right now, though.
No, I know, not at
Yeah,
all. But yeah, now that cast, Laura Birch, like every guy my age,
yeah.
Vanessa Shaw, everybody loved her, and
Everybody
it was
reached
just such a
maturity
good.
with Vanessa Shaw. Yeah,
Yes, yes. And Omri Katz is somebody too. You would think like, oh my god, this kid should have been just again. Some people just don't want to act anymore,
yeah,
for or however else it works. But like, I saw him in that, loved him in that, and then he's in Erie, Indiana with Joe
yeah,
Dante,
yeah.
which
Exactly.
is like one of the greatest shows.
Great show.
And yeah. But no,
Yeah,
it is cool with the way they do these Comic Cons nowadays, because I don't think people maybe felt the love, like you said, like when this movie came out, or even just there was no social media back then. Maybe if somebody saw you on the street and, hey, Mick, I love Sleepwalkers or
yeah,
something.
yeah,
But these cons are kind of a good thing to be able to connect with fans, and people can really feel, especially some of the actors in some of these movies, to really feel the love,
yeah,
especially them. They go to the cons all the time
yeah, yeah.
together, and
It's
I'm like,
true,
that's so cool.
and it gives them a career that they might not have had otherwise, too.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. Because people are wanting to buy, people go to these things. They're very popular, and they give
Yeah,
people, yeah,
yeah,
again,
big
some
time.
money to subsidize some of this, these acting royalties that are very different than they used to be.
Yeah, they shrink way down, especially in terms of streaming. You rarely see any of the
Yeah, which is
royalties.
terrible.
Yeah,
Like when you think about it, actors like I helped Larry Henkin, who's a character actor, like write his memoirs, and he was just telling me like it was great for a while. Like, it was like, hey, for all these credits I have in the 70s, 80s, 90s, like things were, but it makes it like, all right, these cons are something that can really help out, or doing like cameos. Like he does cameos as
Definitely, yeah.
Mr. Heckles. But now that's so cool. Now when that movie like gets going on like Freeform, ABC Family, like that, did you ever write a sequel? Like after this movie came out, did you
No.
have some kind of story in mind, or in
No,
your mind
and
of where you would take it?
I figured doing it once was enough. You know, if they had
Yeah.
come to me for the second one, I would have thought about it, but they very specifically wanted a female writer and a female director. They wanted a female sensibility, and I understand that, and more power to them. And
Yeah.
been there, done that. You know, I'd rather not take the chance that I'm going to fuck it up, you know?
Yeah.
So we have this tremendous following, and I don't want to be the guy who wrecks it, you know?
Yeah. But no, it is again, I think when it comes to sequels, like any movie that comes out, some people are like, "Oh, why are you making a sequel?"
Yeah.
Even the movie's bad, it gives people an opportunity to look at maybe the original
Yeah.
and be like, "Hey, you know what? Let me check that out." Even like I see people talking about the Burbs TV series, I'll still check it out. The Burbs is one of my favorite movies of all time.
Yeah,
So
I
I'm
can't wait
definitely
to
gonna
see what
check it
they
out.
did. I can't wait to see what they
Yeah.
did with it. Yeah.
Yeah, that like the Burbs, honestly, it's like Critters 2. You get like dropped into this world of like these characters, and you're like, this is real. Like I live in a small town where I'm at in Jersey, even where I grew up, there's characters. But here it's like, because I don't know a lot of people, because we've only been here like 6 years, but like everybody's like there's so many characters in this
Yeah.
town.
Yeah.
And it's just like when you watch these movies, like you have that annoying nosy neighbor, and like it gets captured so well in films like Critters 2 and like The Burbs, when you get dropped
Thanks.
into this world and you're like, "Phew."
Yeah. I love the Burbs, and I love everything Joe Dante does. Yeah.
Yeah. Jersey guy. He's a Jersey
Yeah,
guy. He's
he
from
is
like
indeed.
northern Jersey, and I think they named the theater. He used to go to like the Wharton movie theater, but yeah, another guy, like so many amazing credits that
Yeah.
he has had over the years. So when you started the podcast, well, obviously you have the interviewing background. You did it for years.
Yeah.
Is that something that you jumped into thinking like, hey, you know, this medium is something that people are using, and hey, I'd love to talk to some of the people that I've admired over the years. Is that, or did
Well,
somebody approach you to be like, hey, do you want to do a podcast?
well, it was a combination of the two things. Producer
Yeah.
Joe had been at a party and met somebody who worked at Podcast One, and they are the biggest producers of
Yep.
podcasts in the world. And so they wanted to meet with me. So I met with Norm Pattis, who was the head of Podcast One, and he was pitching his company to me like, you know, we have the most successful podcasters in the world. You know, Adam Carolla gets $7.5 million a year for his podcast. And so I said, that sounds like fun. Yeah, I'll do it. I got a lot of friends that it would be fun to just have a conversation on the like. So the 1 year I was with Podcast One, I earned $500 from them. So we went from Podcast One to Fangoria, and then they had a flame out. And then we went to Dread Central. So, no, we also went to Blumhouse, which was a less than wonderful experience. We ended up at Dread
Ugh.
Central, which was great. And then after 7 years, the last couple of years, I kept saying to Joe Russo, producer Joe, you know, I think we've kind of done it. I don't know how much longer we're going to get people that we're not repeating ourselves. And finally, when we did end it. It was like I had no idea it was going to end so hugely. You know, we had a
Yeah.
crowd of 500 people at the American Cinematheque on Hollywood Boulevard, 25 filmmakers in the audience, 6 filmmakers on a dais up in a row, videos, tributes from John Carpenter and Stephen King and all that. And it was like, boy, I never expected this. So
Because you have such passion, like you love this, and
I do.
obviously you're somebody that has done the job, you know, and did it. So you're talking to people, and you can get on that level with them.
Yeah, that's
when
the
you're interviewing
difference.
them.
You know, I
Yeah.
being a peer, being a filmmaker interviewing filmmakers as opposed to being a fan or a journalist, or those are valid as well. But it's just a
Yeah.
different perspective.
Yeah, and it's a different conversation. Like I get it.
Yeah,
Like me talking to you or anyone, it's going to be totally different if you're talking like just to mention like Joe Dante, because
right.
you guys can really talk shop and talk like inside baseball kind of things. It's
Yeah,
like when you see
exactly.
two baseball players talk about like throwing a like in a bat, and you're hearing these things, and you're like, wow, these are things that are way over my. But it's so fascinating to hear. Was there a favorite that you did? Obviously, you did like 250 plus of them,
Yeah.
but do you have one that maybe somebody you didn't know well
Well, there
and
are a
you were able
bunch that
to?
stick out. When
Yeah.
once we were ending it, um, we were able to get people who kind of ignored us for a while. But once it was like, we're finishing it this year, and I'd love to have you on. Quentin Tarantino was one of the most amazing guests we had.
Wow.
James Wan, who almost never has done a podcast, he was incredible. The Stephen King podcast, it was his first podcast he ever did.
Wow.
And there's a director named Peter Medak who directed The Changeling and a bunch of other really good movies. Hungarian filmmaker. He did a film called The Ruling Class with Peter O'Toole back in the 60s.
Okay.
Fantastic storyteller. I mean, stories I'd never heard before. And it was an hour of just Peter talking. And that's one I'd recommend to any real dyed-in-the-wool movie fan,
Yeah.
because it's not like any of the others.
That's awesome.
But I
What do
learned
you think
something
about
from everyone.
Tarantino?
Tarantino was fantastic.
Yeah.
One thing about our show, for whatever reason, I heard people talk about things I've never heard them talk about before. And I would like to think it's because they're comfortable. They're talking to somebody who understands the work that they do, because we do it ourselves. And they know they're safe. They know nobody's going to take pot shots at them. They know it's going to be a supportive environment. And they tend to open up and forget it's an interview and act more like it's a conversation. So
Yeah.
every one of them, I learned something. Truly, it sounds like bullshit, but I learned something from every interview I did on there.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. No, Quentin Tarantino is fascinating. I talked to Howard Berger, who
Howard's
talked
great.
about how like his early, like knowing Quentin as like this guy used to hang out with us, like,
Yeah.
and do things around, and then it just worked out that
From Dusk Till
they were
Dawn
like,
and all that. Yeah.
yes, they're like, hey, can you help us with this? Oh yeah, sure. And then hey, if you ever do a movie, if you ever get to do a movie, we'll do the special effects for free. I think.
And
That's what Howard told
KNB,
him. And
KNB will
yeah.
do movies of any size, from the giant Oscar movies to the smallest independent movies.
They should do a documentary on them.
They
Because
should.
I talked to a few people that their first job was with them, and they were very welcoming.
They're great people.
Just people that were interested in doing it.
Yeah.
Hey, you want to sleep on the couch? Okay, we'll help you out. Come on.
No, they're great people. Greg and Howard are really good friends, and they did all of the Masters of Horror episodes, and just really good friends, good people, and great artists.
No, yeah, totally. So, one question I always love to ask folks, well, two. First is early on, obviously you were doing music and then the filmmaking, but did you have any other careers or any interests that if this didn't work out that you'd be doing that?
If it didn't work out, I would
today?
just be homeless. I don't know. But the first thing I wanted to be was a cartoonist. My father was a very talented artist and went to art school and everything. I inherited some of his talent, but none of his schooling. So, but I thought that I would make a living doing cartooning, whether it was animated cartoons or comic books or whatever. I can't do it anymore, but as a kid, I was good at it. So that was the thing I thought I would do. And then writing was something. I started writing short stories, and I have ended up writing several books. So, I've done a lot, but I really thought I was going to be a rock star.
Yeah. Is it just get to the point? Because I've talked to a lot of people that are rocks. You probably it's Landis's buddy, Peter Bernstein, Elmer
Oh yeah,
Bernstein's
Peter
son.
did the music for my first directing job.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, Peter was really cool. And it was just really neat because obviously his work is phenomenal for his career.
Yeah.
But my dad loved, like, no joke, Mick, my dad's favorite movie of all time was The Great Escape. So talking to Peter and just telling him about, like, my dad had like when DVDs first came out and they didn't have like any really features,
Yeah.
and they kept just repeating the music. So
Yeah.
on the main screen, it was just the dun dun
Elmer
dun,
Bernstein
dun, dun,
score.
dun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome
But
stuff.
yeah, no, it's just so cool to be able to. Yeah, I don't know where I was going with that, but yeah, no, Peter was awesome. So look at that. That's a cool connection. That
Yeah.
But yeah, no, he was a rock. He was like, yeah, man, I'm gonna be a rock and roller. And then it was like, yeah, this isn't working out.
No,
Let
no,
me,
it's a lot
let
harder
me
to
see what I
do
can
that
do.
than people think. Yeah.
Yeah. And especially that scene, right? I'm sure in San Diego, LA, that whole area was probably such a like so much fun, but there's probably so much competition.
It was a blast, but one of the greatest things we did was we opened for the Kinks once, and that was phenomenal. Yeah.
When was the last time you did anything musically, or did you put it on the
Well,
shelf? And
I did, but a couple of months ago, there's a group called Lovecraft, LVCRFT, and they're made up of very successful songwriter producers, and their side gig is doing horror music. And so they've got a greatest hits album coming out later this year, and they asked me if I would sing on it. And so I think they expected me to just do talk singing or something, because a lot of actors, they would have them on there and they would just, they're not really belting out a song. But
Yeah.
I belted, and it'll be out later this year. So it's the first time I've been in somebody's recording studio in many decades. So
wow,
it kicks.
Was it like riding a bike? Were you able to get to sound the way you were like,
I got
wow,
there.
did you shock yourself?
I did, because I didn't expect to get there, because I hadn't done it seriously in a long time. But I also brought in Robert Rodriguez to play lead guitar on it. So it's a really cool song.
That is cool.
And I hope
It's
I'm
like
not telling
horror and rock and roll is
Yeah.
like a connection, right?
Oh,
You
absolutely.
think about like Tommy Lee Wallace. and
Yeah.
John Carpenter. Isn't it funny? Like there's so many, like there's so many people that are
Yeah.
like, you
Bill
know, I guess it
Malone,
is rock and roll, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And you know,
filmmaking's breaking rules, right? That's
rock and
exactly
roll is the horror of movie world, you know?
Yeah. And the last question, Mick, and this has been awesome. How about like like in your career? Because there's never like you never think of moments sometimes when you're in them. Did you ever like keep mementos from things you worked on? Like early on, you were like, "Hey, this might be something that like working at Star Wars office or Spielberg, like Amblin."
I have a Darth Vader mask over here in my office
From 77, like when you worked there.
Yep.
That's awesome.
I have Mother sitting in my director's chair right opposite me from Psycho 4, the 1 year dead mother. I have a critter over here. I have one of the Jim Rumpf mugs of Darth Vader from when I was working at Star Wars. And I have one of the topiary lions from The Shining out in front of my office.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
So you just always thought about, you know what, this might be something that I want to, have that memory with.
Yeah, it's worth it to me. I don't care what it's worth on eBay. It's worth it to me. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. Yeah, there's some people I ask that question, like, yeah, I got a stack of scripts in my closet. Yeah, I don't know what I'm going to do with them. And it's like, yeah, you find the things that mean something to you.
Yeah.
And you have these little parts of your life that you could go back. I know you do some acting in some of the films.
Well,
like you've
let's
acted
put
too.
quotes around acting.
Quotes around the acting. But I think it's always so cool because at some point, like when an actor can go back and watch something, it's like, oh, you know what that's a dad looked like or mom looked like when she was like 25. Obviously, there's photos and film, I'm sure, somewhere around, but it's pretty neat to have that little a little
memory.
few seconds of you on there.
Yeah. It's pretty cool because nobody would ever accuse me of being an actor. But once in a while, I would put myself in one of my shows. Whenever we're on location and we run out of good actors, I'll put myself in for a small part. We did that a lot on The Stand. Stephen King and I are in scenes together all the time to help ourselves through.
Oh man, that's so cool. Mick, this was awesome. I'm so happy I connected with you. And one thing
Thanks,
that's pretty
Doug.
cool, so I know the other link didn't work, but the one that I sent you, we just did Bride of Frankenstein,
Oh, awesome.
which made one of the best movies ever.
Yeah.
But the girl's name that's above, Antonia Carlotta, she's like the great niece
Oh,
of Carl Lummy or Lemmy.
Lemley, yeah.
Yes, of that family. And she was able to let me know some wild, like she loves the history of her family. So she was talking about like some cool behind the scenes stuff. But I never knew like Universal started in New Jersey.
Yeah.
And they moved to Hollywood all because of like Thomas Edison was suing them.
Yeah, Thomas
You
Edison.
knew that?
Yeah,
That's insane.
Well, remember, I worked at Universal back in the 80s.
That is true, yeah.
So.
Yeah, I guess that's true. But like living in Jersey, like there's an Edison, New Jersey, right?
Yeah.
Next town over where I grew up.
Well, that's where
Edison's.
that's where movies began in the United States, was in New Jersey. And it's also in 1933 where the first drive-in theater was made.
Yeah. Those are the best. Do you have one? There's a bunch out in California, right?
Not anymore. No.
Really?
No, nothing closer than 60 miles away from me.
Oh, okay, but that's not too. Yeah, the one by me in PA is about 60 miles. There's like two of them, but one is like almost you feel like you're going to like Woodstock because it has like a little snack stand.
Yeah.
What they do is they'll promote two movies and then they show two more afterwards because you can camp and
nice.
you can bring your own food and everything. And it is just the coolest thing. Once the movie hits, I saw Friday the 13th there last summer. It was the first time I ever went, and it was the coolest thing ever.
Nice. Nice. Love it.
Yeah. All right, Mick.
Well,
thank
great
you so
talking
much.
to you, Doug.
Rock on, man.
You too. Take care.
All right. Thanks for sharing your stories with me.
You bet. Take care.